Western Washington Amateur Television Society. That's on the 08 machine. I'm WW7ATS. The Western Washington Amateur Television Society is a group of amateur radio enthusiasts that take to the airways with fast scan television. We have a repeater located up on Cougar Mountain. We transmit on 70 centimeters. It's a crossband repeater and spits out images at 1.2 gigahertz. To find out more about Western Washington Amateur Television Society, Google WW7ATS. That's Google WW7ATS. That'll take you to our club's homepage. There you'll find a little bit of information about the club, the frequencies we operate on, and also you'll find a link to YouTube where we stream our nets held on Wednesdays and Saturdays between 8 and 9 o'clock. We'd also like to thank the SeaTac Repeater Association for letting us use WW7STR, referred to as the 08 machine, 14708, with a tone of 103.5 for our voice transmissions during our nets. So with that, this is Dave, KD7ZYM. I'll pause in case anybody has emergency traffic or needs to make a contact on the 08 machine before our net gets fully underway. Hearing none, again, welcome to the Western Washington Amateur Television Society net. So far checked in this evening is Jessica, KF7UHK, Richard, K7ITX, Jim, N7QO, myself, Dave, KD7CYM. Also text was Ron will be out this evening. His wife fell down and injured her head and was getting an x-ray over that. And I also got a text from Lee, N7KC, said he will not be at the net tonight. So with that, is there anybody else that would like to check into the net this evening? Hearing none, we'll get the net underway. This is Dave, KD7ZYM. Let's go to Jessica, KF7UHK.
I want to send my good thoughts towards Ron and his wife. Bumping your head is no good. Your head is such an important part of your body and everything it contains. So let's see. I was on a paratransit bus all day today and yesterday, and it's been a long 2 days. It's been fun. The people are all very nice, but the last 2 people I had just gotten out of an Eagles meeting, and I said to myself, I wish I could have gone into that Eagles place and just had a couple drinks before, I ended up my shift just to, while I was still driving, but that wasn't going to happen. But everybody is very, very nice. It's just I kind of started falling behind. When you fall behind on one, then it seems to domino down to the rest of the people that you're trying to pick up. Of course, it's also a Saturday, so there's lots of people on the road out there, and traffic is not always in your favor, shall we say. So, but otherwise, I'm happy to be home, and I literally just walked in the door and ran over here and turned on my computer because I saw it was 8 o'clock. So, with that, I'm going to pass it back to Jessica Never, KF7UHK.
UHK, let's go to Richard, K7ITX in Kent.
Thank you, Jessica, for just thinking of this right after you get off of work. That's very nice of you. Sounds like you had some very nice customers today. So, I'm sure every day won't be like that. There's no doubt. I'm sure there'll be a day when every customer just doesn't seem to be right. But anyway, hopefully that is in your distant future. So, what else? that's terrible. I kind of sent an email to Ron. I was bugging him about showing up for the net, and then I heard about the accident Joanne had, so that's kind of spooky. And then to have x-rays on top of it, so it sounds like maybe she's got a bump or a bruise to go along with it, so that's not good. And I see James is wearing a baseball cap, but it doesn't look like the Seattle Mariners, so looks like there could be an arch enemy that I don't understand. It almost looks alien to me, actually, so. Well, anyway, let's move right along with going back to net control. KD7ZYM, K7ITX.
Let's go on to Jim, N7QO in living color.
N7QO, thank you, Dave. Good evening, everyone. Wow, Dick, I don't know if you saw that. You might watch out, otherwise some alien will abduct you there. Wow, well, Ron, Joanne fell, hit her head. That's not good. I had a friend, or a friend's wife, depending on how you want to look at it. She fell, hit her head, and she died from that. Yeah, that could be very serious. I don't know. So our thoughts and prayers to Ron and Joanne there. Jessica, busy. I had a thought, a question. Are the buses air conditioned? Okay, that's good. Otherwise you'd really be suffering. Just a thought. I know when I was riding around in buses, I was perspiring, and that definitely made for unpleasantries. So maybe people would be happier to get on the bus, especially if they did not have an air-conditioned house. So that's got to help some people's attitudes, I would like to think, anyway. Dick, yeah, I have worked in retail in the past as a salesman while I was in high school, actually, and so I learned at an early age the customer is not always right. You're right about that, Dick. I don't know. You do the best you can. Some people just manners are not a part of their repertoire. So hang in there, Jessica. Good that you have a good day every now and then. Back to you, Dave, and 7QO.
Let's go on to James, WU7N.
James, WU7N in Northeast Bellevue. Well, yeah, sorry to hear about, I got in a little late here today, but I guess Joanne has taken a fall or something and injured her head, is I think what I'm getting out of this. So prayers in that direction. Jessica, thank you for hauling around all the people today. I think that's a great job. I think you really got a winner there. So glad to hear that your interactions are good as well. Yeah, this is actually a company that does optics, a lot of night vision optics and all sorts of other kinds of optics. But yeah, it does kind of look, it has that feeling of being some kind of extraterrestrial alphabet, doesn't it? Or ideogram. But I got this actually, I think it was a conference right here in Bellevue, and the lady said that she would, give the group I was with all these free hats if we would tell everybody else about her booth. And I said, well, what do you want me to tell about your booth? And I think that kind of threw her off. I said, well, you gotta have something to bring them in, what do you do or what's special about it? And I think she also that also threw her sideways because I don't think she was actually expecting us to actually do that. And I said, well, I'm not gonna take the hat if that's what you want me to do, and then, not do it. the weird conference behavior there, or convention behavior, rather. Let's see, today I didn't do anything terribly exciting. I went out for a walk, and it was actually kind of misty, sort of like an ambitious fog, but not quite a rain. It's sort of like a fog that needs to read, some motivational material. That's what it was. Anyway, that's the weather report out here, and so I don't know. That'll probably mean that nobody in the neighborhood will water for the next 2 weeks because they'll think it rained today. Anyway, so that's it here in Northeast Bellevue. I'm going to turn it back to Dave for the Western Washington Amateur Television Society. Take it away, Dave.
WW7ATS James, thanks for that. And it is time for an ID. This is the Western Washington Amateur Television Society net on the 08 machine. I'm Dave, KD7ZYM, and I'll pause in case anybody else wants to check into the net.
Hotel Yankee Bravo, in and out.
In and out, Gary. Thank you. And again, this is Dave, KD7ZYM in Lake City. Oh my, 66 degrees outside, and it's wonderful inside upstairs in my radio shack today. Let's see, as far as exercise, it's a big exercise day. I think I walked the 300 feet out to the mailbox and back. That was about my exercise for the day. And kudos to Jessica being one of the working souls that checked into the nets tonight. I did domestic chores around the house. That's as far as I can say for that four-letter word work that I did. So that's about it. Pretty quiet. So with that, I'm going to take it up to the top of the list again to Jessica, KF7UHK.
You can tell, but I wanted to make you all the rest of you folks look colorful by turning myself all black and white to match my background. So I don't know if you noticed that, but that's what's going on there. Let's see, I had an interesting thing happen today, and that was sometimes you have to wait for, you'll have gaps in your day because either people cancel or it's just the way the roster works out. So I had an hour to wait for someone who was going to come out of a dialysis in the Mount Vernon Hospital. And so there's a nice place there for us transit folks, us paratransit folks to park our little buses, and we can kind of line them up because it's kind of busy up at the hospital with paratransit. So I was there, and I ran into my co-partner who hired in at the same time as I did, and came in the same boat as I did, which is none. And we had a good talk about everything, and making sure you had a thick skin for anybody that came along that wasn't as happy as you were doing your job. So and he's not as thick-skinned as I am. He's had problems with that. So we discussed that and just had a great time. And then my hour finally got done, and the person that I came to come move around, who had been in dialysis, had to go into the hospital, and so wasn't able to take her out in my paratransit. So all of a sudden, I need to go on to my next round, even though I sat there for an hour doing basically nothing but relaxing and having snacks and cooling off from the day. So that was kind of a long change. That happens every now and then. He had 2.5 hours to wait, but I think it got shortened up because I think the person that left for me gave these folks more time to work on the other person. So that just goes the way it goes. So in black and white, K7UHK.
UHK, let's go to Richard, K7ITX.
That's an interesting story, Jessica. I guess my question would then be, so that's a lot of time for relaxation, do they allow you to bring them like a book? Can you read a book when you're, waiting for 2 hours or whatever it is? I had a job like that in a door factory of all places, where we would glue together blocks of wood, laminate them, electronically in a big giant microwave, and we would make we prefabricate the door styles, the vertical portion, and even the horizontal portions, get them all glued together. While it's setting, while it's in the machine, I wouldn't say there's ever 1 or 2 hours downtime, but there might be a minute and a half or 2 minutes of just standing around. And believe it or not, I figured out a way to get this. Archipelago. It's pretty weird to read that in a factory situation, but I had a stack of pallets, and the gulag. It was a paperback, so I could bend it, but I put blocks of wood on, to keep the book open, but then the pallets were just high enough so I wouldn't have to touch. The only time I'd have to touch anything is when it was time to turn the page. Obviously, I couldn't read 2 pages in a minute or a minute and a half, but I'll tell you, it sure beat standing around. I mean, and the Gulag Archipelago, that was no slouch of a book either. So, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, I love that man. K7ITX, back to net control.
ITX. Let's go to Covington Jim, N7QO.
Saw a couple things on the news today. One, there's a fellow who stole an airplane, and he's in Mississippi, and he was threatening to fly the airplane into a Walmart. He eventually wound up doing what might probably be best defined as a crash landing, but a good crash landing, one where you can walk away from it. Can't reuse the airplane immediately, but he can walk away with it. So don't know exactly why he did that. Don't know exactly why he changed his mind on that, but that's interesting. And I guess he was an insider. He worked at the airport, so he was able to get access to the aircraft and just kind of stole it. Unfortunate for the owner of the aircraft. Hope it wasn't something that someplace he needed to be pretty quickly, because that's not going to happen. So that was interesting. And then the other story I saw, reset. The other story I saw was they were saying that a number of cities are going to lose regional airline service, and they're blaming it mostly on a lack of pilots. Where was it? Somewhere in Iowa, was it? I don't remember the city anymore, because it's going to happen, I think, with increasing frequency. But they're going to discontinue commercial air service to the airport completely in the very near future. So I don't know. the airlines would get people coming out of the military, and the military has not been cranking out pilots like they've been historically. And then it used to be people would, another alternate route would be for people to learn to fly in little airplanes and then move on to the regionals and then up to the airlines, but that source seems to have dried out as well. So I don't know what's going to happen to us here, but just throwing that out as food for thought. KD7ZYM and 7QO.
And it's time for ID again. This is the Western Washington Amateur Television Society. Net, I'm Dave, KD7ZYM. So let's move on to James, WU7N.
Well, they could get years out of both you and I if they would just waiver us from age 65 to age 70. And then, you could just jump right back in that cockpit again, Jim. I could too, but I don't think anybody wants to spend all that expensive money on me just for a couple of years, a few years. Well, 10 years, really. That's what I meant to say, 10 years. Yeah, that's right. Well, anyway, Jessica, since you said you were in black and white, I just thought I would put this background up to kind of show you that I'm in color, even though it's, kind of older technology here. It is interesting. I guess this drama went on with this King Air flying all over North Mississippi long enough that they had some record number of people watching some rural or all of northern Mississippi when I was there was rural. I don't know if it is anymore or not. But they were watching some police department's live Facebook page, and people were typing in questions like, what should I do? And nobody quite knew what to tell them. What do you do? I don't know. And the aircraft, if you look at its flight profile, it was between 2,000 and 5,000 feet. That's not that high. I mean, given the altitude of the ground in northern part of Mississippi. So, well, you know what they say. Why did he change his mind? Well, it's better to be standing on the ground wishing you were committing some horrific act of terrorism rather than being in the air staring down wishing you were back on the ground. So that's how I would describe the change of heart there. I guess he was a fueler and had some flight training or something, but if he had stacked up the airplane horribly, I would have just been so sad because that King Air was a classic. I just wouldn't have been able to tolerate that loss. But anyway, well, with that jolly point of philosophy and perspective, I will turn it back to Dave, our net control for the Western Washington Amateur Television Society.
7N, thanks for that. Boy, pictures of the twin. If you're going to steal a plane, I guess a twin would be better, but I don't know, thank God it didn't take a jet. Who knows what would have happened then. But he did have to have some skill levels to fly a twin, I would think. So that was kind of an interesting thing. And Jessica, getting paid to wait, I like that. Well, that was in the news profession at times. We'd have a day where we said, I'm frameless. That's where you go into the office and you sit and you wait for an assignment. And you sit and you wait for an assignment. You go over to the computers. They had a T1 line so you could surf the net as much as you wanted all day. And then the kitchen was there with all kinds of goodies to eat. So it wasn't all that bad just to have to suffer and sit and wait in an air-conditioned area. Life is wonderful at times, and you got paid for that. So that's my bad news about sitting and waiting. This is Dave, KD7ZYM in Lake City. So with that, let's go back up to Jessica, KF7UHK.
Making airplanes, they gave us two 10s and a 30-minute lunch, and that was it. And if you were out of your seat and not working, they knew it, and they wanted to know what you were doing. So yeah, I go down the office we get paid. Well, it's like paradise, and I also had air conditioning and windows, which I didn't have at any of my last jobs. So pretty darn sweet. And I was thinking about something that William Shatner said, I think jokingly funny. He proposed that they should put a pipeline in. I wish I could do his voice, but he's proposed that they should put a pipeline in from Seattle down to California from water shortages, and just pipe some water down there because we have a lot of it up here in the Pacific Northwest. I just thought it was so funny to hear him say that. I wish I could go find the clip of him saying it was pretty funny. I don't think anybody actually thought they should do it, but he said it pretty well. And the last thing is, I think I could go from a bus driver to a pilot. So it's how much more harder could it be from what I'm doing now to flying a big airplane? Not that much. So I'm gonna pass it back. KF7 UHK.
UHK, I did hear Bob, K9PQ, check in audio-wise. Is you out there, Bob?
Greetings. Yes, I am here, getting my video. I think my video should be ready to go. I haven't switched it in myself, though. I haven't quite gotten that far. But if somebody's got the switch page up, they can switch me in. Otherwise, I'll get it next time around. Yeah, sorry, I missed the first part of the net, but I did catch Jim and both Jims and yeah, about that airplane. And Jim, that was really interesting about the lack of people. Qualified people becoming pilots. A friend of mine did do that. He did small plane he wasn't in the military, he did small plane and then moved his way up, and I remember him telling me that going from single to multi was the real big step, in his opinion, more so than going from multi to sort of commercial. Although I think he never did go to jet. I think he did become a commercial pilot. I think he did possibly turboprop planes, the small, what I would call puddle jumpers, the ones that would go regional flights. I haven't talked to him in quite a while, but when I knew him, this was still his dream, and I spent many happy hours in a little 4-seat Cessna, going up there, and we'd split the cost of the flight time, the rental time, and go flying around, and I felt that was money very well spent. Okay, well, that'll be good for this time around. I'm going to send it back. This is K9PQ.
Thanks for that. Let's go to Richard, K7ITX in Kent.
Well, great to see you tonight, Bob. Looks like you might be trying to grow a beard, or maybe that's always been like that. But I was just going to make sure you knew we had proof that we could actually see you. So you did have someone switch behind the scenes. Maybe you didn't even realize it. So let's see here. Speaking of switching, I probably could do a little bit more myself in that regard. There we go. Let's see, there was one comment made, oh gosh, doggone it anyway, it had to do, the lack of, or the, changing or diminishing the level of service to the regional airports. That kind of worries me. Lately, I've made it a point to purposely fly into a regional airport to avoid the big airport. Like case in point, when I go to the car race down in Sonoma, the is international airport. I guess it must be international. Well, no, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. But I know it's sure a lot tinier. I mean, tiny. So tiny that, it's just hard to describe when, offices are in portables and things are intense. But it is just so much less stressful to get your rental car and your baggage. Driving to like Napa and having, you're not dealing with the hubbub of San Francisco and the Golden Gate Bridge. None of that. You're actually right in the middle of wine country, and the thought of not having that opportunity really kind of disturbs me. I can understand the problem, and all right, if they don't have enough pilots, then I don't want them to just kind of conjure them up or try to make shortcuts to get them either. So we'll just have to deal with it in some way or fashion. And if I don't get to go to the car race in California, so be it. I think I'd rather stay home than take a chance with an unqualified rookie, so to speak. So, all right, KD7ZYM, K7ITS, back to net control.
ITX. Let's go on to Jim in 7QO.
N7QO, thank you, Dave. Well, let's see. Jim, you said something earlier about precipitation. Yeah, I had some drizzle here at the house this morning. It for sure was somewhere between 3 hours, maybe as much as 4 hours here, and everything was definitely damp. If you stood outside for more than 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you'd be damp. If you stood outside for like 20 minutes, you'd be wet. But otherwise, wasn't a bad day. I just thought I'd throw it in there. I forgot to mention that earlier. Yeah, there's they like you pointed out, Jim, they already changed the retirement age. Mandatory retirement used to be 60. They changed it to 65, and they did so when I was maybe around 57 or 58. I was kind of thinking I would retire at age 60, but I kept working. I don't know if I'm greedy or just poor or what, but yeah, both. So anyway, now there is talk about changing the retirement age again. I'm not on the inside anymore, so I don't know if they were talking about 67 or 68, but there was talk about them changing the age again. I haven't heard 70, but you never know. And let's see, Bob, reset. Bob, multi-engine aircraft. Well, yeah, I think the big difficulty is not so much in flying them as it is the emergency procedures, and that just takes some training and some practice, and it's something that you just need to do. Jessica, you could absolutely be an airline pilot. Right now, only until age 65, so you don't have that long to go. But they might change it. So you never know. Except they have made it so that the requirements are much greater than what they used to be. Much greater than what they used to be, and that is probably the bulk of the problem. They did so after a significant accident a number of years ago, and I'm not so sure that was a good idea, because now there's this shortage and no one knows exactly how to resolve the problem. I don't know. And Dick, yeah, I certainly sympathize with you and the whole country regarding loss of service at smaller airports. A lot of times the tickets are less if you go into some of these smaller airports, because the fees associated with them are much less. For an airline to pay a landing fee at one of the smaller airports is much less. For them to park an airplane there overnight costs them less. Renting ticket counter space, frequently the employees are paid a little bit less than if they're in a big city. So there's a whole lot of reason why the fees can be less going to a smaller destination. And yeah, well, I don't know. Back to you, Dave, N7QO.
QO, let's go to James, WW7N.
WW7ATS here. Well, I mean, the whole, the New York accident caused this sort of political feel-good response. And at the time, I was kind of wondering how this was ever supposed to work, because to do what they have now, but maybe with the caveat, reduce the number of hours back to where it was before you could take your airline transport pilot, your ATP test, but then still have more time before you could be pilot in command. Because how else do you learn something like that unless you sit in the co-pilot seat and you actually have someone help you do it day in, day out? I don't understand anything that complex. How else you do it? Maybe there is a way. I just don't know what it is. So yeah, I think they're going to have to revisit the regulations. But that will only happen at the point when, rich, important people, or maybe, I vote to say the politicians, can't have their Learjets until they fix everybody else, and then it would be fixed immediately, I think. I'm pretty confident of that. Yeah, the small regional airports, those are important for a lot of reasons. I mean, we all think of them in terms of moving people around, but huge amounts of cargo gets moved around that way, too. And so if they're having those kinds of transport problems at regionals, that's going to affect everybody, whether you fly or not. I was not aware of that. This always struck me as a bit odd. Someone has open heart surgery, and so they get in their automobile and they drive to the flight surgeon, who says, oh, you've had open heart surgery, so you cannot fly a private aircraft, single engine, non-complex aircraft. But then they get in their car and drive on a public roadway down the freeway and go back home again. That always just cracked me up. I mean, it just makes no sense whatsoever. Get me going. I mean, Jessica, I don't know if you actually had to do a medical or not. But a first-class medical is pretty extensive. You have to do an EKG and drug testing and all kinds of other stuff to actually, do just about anything serious with money with an airplane. But I don't think you do as a commercial pilot or a commercial driver. I don't think it's quite that extensive. Again, why not? I mean, somebody's got it wrong. That always kind of tickled me too. You can drive, an 18-wheeler loaded with gasoline down the road with less of a medical than you can flying a Cessna 172. I don't get it. I guess it's just what's doable. I guess a lot of these changes occurred. I wonder how many of you guys know about that. So with that, we'll pass it back to Dave. KD7ZYM, this is WU7N.
7N, this is Dave, KD7ZYM, and for ID, this is the Western Washington Amateur Television Society net on the 08 machine. Oh my, television news before helicopters. Have to go up and shoot aerial pictures, and a lot of times just go down to Lake Union and hop on a float plane and take off and go do stories. But the individual pilot I had was in his 90s, and I was always a little apprehensive, but he was legal and okay, so I'm still here alive, but I probably did about 25 or 30 flights with him, so maybe age doesn't make that much difference if you know what you're doing and you're healthy. Let's see, that's about it. This is Dave, KD7ZYM in Lake City, and we got enough time to go up to Jessica again, KF7UHK.
I did have to have a medical and, of course, P-test, and it was paid for by the last employer, which was the Halcon, when I was driving for the train folks. So that's still good for. I think it was a 2-year medical thing that they did. I don't, was it expensive? I don't think it was very expensive. It just seemed like a very thorough medical, but it was a medical. They check a bunch of things. But with what you say, I've got at least 1 year that I can go and do flying. Now, once again, I need some time to brush up on actual flying because I've never done it before. But and emergency procedures, I say, those are for babies. Who needs those? Come on. If you get it up, you could probably maybe get it back down. And the music died. Don McLean. I think if you're thinking Bye Bye Miss American Pie, if you're talking about that, Don McLean did that song. And of course, Bob Newhart had the Grace L. Ferguson and Storm Door Company bit, which if you haven't heard that, it's really fun about flying airplanes and flying, and I think he tells it very well. So with that, I don't think I have much more, except for once we went to San Francisco, and the weather was so bad, they bused us up to San Jose to come back home, and we found that interesting, because we drove probably at least an hour on the freeway with a bus full of people, and probably several buses, because it was an airplane full of people going back somewhere on this airplane. With that, this is KF7UHK.
UHK, let's go to K9PQ, Bob. K9PQ, this is KD7ZYM.
Oh, can you hear me now? Okay, good. There we go. Getting some thumbs up. Thank you. I don't know what happened last time. Operator error, no doubt. Well, let's see a few things. So, yeah, the beard. Just a few days overdue shaving. That's the hazards of living at home and not having to look good for anybody. As for regional airports, I guess this qualifies as a regional airport, but I'm actually very excited about Payne Field. It has commercial airline traffic, like big-time commercial airline traffic. I think Alaska Air is in there, and I think they're hoping to expand it. And for me, for those of you who know where I live, it's easy, probably 15-minute drive, 20-minute drive from my place, rather than a horrendous 40-minute drive, probably to get to SeaTac from my place, depending on what the traffic is like. Could be a lot longer. So I haven't flown out of there yet, and the destinations are rather limited. But boy, it would sure be nice for me to have that expand. And as for the pilot issue, so I was wondering. Let me see if I can share this onto see if I can make this work here. Share this. Sorry, bear with me, please. Share screen. Let's share this. Go. So if somebody can switch that back so you can see
see that picture, put that picture out on the air. I'm going to get back to where I can see what's actually showing on the air. Oh, it is, okay. So this, I mentioned this some time ago, this is the Auto Aviation, Auto OTTO, Aviation Solera 500L, and it's a big deal. It's a single engine pusher, and its big deal is that it's a laminar flow, 100% laminar flow aircraft, and which makes it much more efficient. It's extremely fuel efficient. And at the time, I thought, this sounds like a game changer. But even then, I thought, well, you have to have enough pilots, though, because this is about I think it's about an 8-passenger plane, something like that. But it's so inexpensive to fly that they felt like this could be very commercially viable and really change the way a lot of aviation is done. And when I just checked their website, that's where this picture's from, and they had an update in late 2021. They're still apparently going gangbusters to get this out and commercially available. But I wonder, I'd like to get, Jim N7QO and anybody else's opinion for that matter on whether something like this could be used with self-driving. Essentially, I would call it autopilot, but, with, like, no pilot. Timeout.
K9PQ.
PQ, the Gator gotcha.
Yes, sorry, I noticed that myself. Okay, well I pretty much said what I wanted to say. I was about to send it back. K9PQ. Thank you.
9PQ. Let's go to Kent. K7ITX.
Well, that's pretty cool, Bob. Thanks for sharing that very, very interesting airplane. And so you called it a pusher. So I guess I'll just demonstrate my lack of ignorance. I'm going to guess it's called a pusher because the propeller is in the back instead of the front. And so immediately now, when I see that, I'm thinking, oh, okay, that means that the propeller is in reverse mode compared to a normal airplane. So anybody can straighten me out on that, I'd appreciate it. And so I always wondered about the airplanes that I've seen, several styles where the propeller, instead of being on the front of the wings, is on the back of the wings, and clearly it's pointed the reverse direction. But they seem to fly just fine. I'm not too sure what the advantage is, except maybe it's just fuel efficiency. And yeah, that'd be pretty cool if they can find what do we call that? Economy of scale. We used to call that in economics, and I guess I still hear that once in a while. I tried it in some of my business dealings. Construction, but there was no economy of scale to speak of. I mean, clearly if it's a very smallish scale operation, it's going to be really high per foot or per unit compared to large scale. But once you hit, I guess, a more by increasing the volume. It just seemed you always got the same amount, but for a hell of a lot more work. And so I kind of went the reverse direction. I tried to sell high and do less. K7ITX, back to net control.
ITX and ID time again. This is the Western Washington Amateur Television Society net on the 08 machine. I'm Dave, KD7ZYM. Let's go to Jim, N7QO in Covington.
N7QO, thank you, Dave. Well, Jim, you were talking about some of the medical things going on. Yeah, interesting. I have a friend who was grounded. He didn't have a heart attack, but he had some sort of intermittently low heartbeat or something like that. So they installed in him a pacemaker, which doesn't work all the time. It only works as required. And they also installed in him, it's the same unit, a combination pacemaker and defibrillator. So, and it never activated in the years that he's had it. But so he was trying hard to get his medical, arguing that if someone like me were to have a heart attack in flight, I'm likely to die. Whereas with him, he just gets zapped, and he's back flying. Well, they never did get him his medical back, but I don't know. There are points to be made, I think, for a lot of what goes on. Oh, and also, Jim, the last thing you said, do we know about that? The IDer covered you up, so we couldn't exactly hear what it was that you were asking. Bob, I better reset. I have not seen that particular airplane. The laminar flow airfoil is not a new thing. In fact, I had an airplane which was manufactured in 1973 that had a laminar flow wing. Yeah, there are, of course, advantages and disadvantages to them. But that looks, I don't know, that particular airplane looks a little odd to me. If there are passengers on that thing, they'd be fighting to peek through the hole in the side of the fuselage there. I didn't see any windows on the side. So I don't know, I'm scratching my head about that thing. Maybe that's just a prototype or something. There was an aircraft that looked somewhat similar to that. If I'm not mistaken, it was called the Learfan. Yeah, that looked kind of cool. And so far as the props, well, I don't know what's the right way to look at it, Dick, but some aircraft have like an engine in the front which pulls the air, and then a prop in the back as well which pushes the air. Then there are some airplanes like the B-36 was entirely a pusher configuration. So I don't know, just different designs. And let's see, Bob, you were talking about pilotless aircraft. Now that you mention that, I would not be surprised that someone may make some strides in that direction. There's already discussion about for like an air taxi service, just a couple people, 2 people, maybe up to 4 people get in this little airplane and it takes them where they want to go with no pilot. an argument that someone might make for that. They always try to say that an accident is a result of pilot error. Well, if one of those airplanes crashes, you can't blame the pilot. So, I don't know. Blame the engineer? I don't know. I personally feel more comfortable with someone on board who at least has a rudimentary knowledge of aviation. If something breaks, that has been my number one fear. There are so many things that can go wrong with an aircraft. Metal fatigue, structural failure, mechanical items. It's just, there are so many things that can go wrong that I would feel better having someone on board who can maybe take over and do something. But maybe an initial step might be to reduce the cockpits to only one pilot on board. But the transport category aircraft we have now are not capable of doing that. One person cannot reach all of the controls, if nothing else, so it requires two people. But it's always better to have an extra head in the cockpit and an extra set of eyes and ears. So it would increase one's workload dramatically if whoever's flying had to do the communicating and everything as well. They're taking steps to eliminate voice communication as well, but I'm not exactly sure how well that's going to work. Anyway, I'm just about to time it out here. Back to you, Bob. Back to you, Dave, and 7QO.
N7QO, let's go to James, WU7N.
Looks like we just got a couple of minutes left here, so I'll say one thing that increased a lot of regulation in the United States for air taxi services and other things like that was February 3rd, 1959. Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, the Big Bopper, J.P. Richardson were all killed in a plane crash. And I guess, I wasn't there, obviously it was before I was born, but I guess back then, if you wanted to have an air taxi service and you had an airplane and you knew how to fly it, that's all it took. But another major contributing factor, I blame the Russians, because this picture right here shows what an artificial horizon, this is the only kind I've ever seen, where essentially what you see on this little instrument gauge is the same thing that you see staring out the front windshield of the aircraft. And apparently the artificial horizon mounted in the aircraft that went down in that horrific accident, it's hard even for me to wrap my head around this, but it's apparently what somebody like standing in the Politburo headquarters looking up at the airplane would see is what's displayed on the instrument. And they think, because it's a completely different kind of concept for this type of instrument, they think the pilot was confused and he lost his spatial orientation and the aircraft crashed. So, I'm joking because I don't think, someone told me that for a while, Russia or somewhere in Asia, somewhere like that, that was the normal kind of artificial horizon, because that's what the commissar saw as he was standing on the ground as the airplane left. But I don't know if that was just a funny comment, but definitely there was a very different kind of artificial horizon in that aircraft. With that, it looks like we're out of time, so let me turn it over to Dave to wrap this up.
WU7N, thanks for joining the net this evening. And we have run out of time. This is the Western Washington Amateur Television Society net on the 08 machine. We'd like to thank the SeaTac Repeater Association for allowing us to use WW7STR repeater, known as the 08 machine, 147.08 with a tone 103.5 for our voice transmissions. So on behalf of the Western Washington Amateur Television Society, this is Dave, KD7ZYM, signing off the net this evening. Good evening all at 9 o'clock.